The front door of the small house creaked open, and Sergeant Marcus Webb stepped inside for the first time in 18 months. His duffel bag hit the floor with a heavy thud that echoed through the quiet hallway. The house smelled different, like lavender and fresh paint, not the familiar scent of coffee and old wood he remembered. His boots, still caked with desert dust, left faint prints on the hardwood floor as he moved deeper into the living room. Something felt wrong. The air was too still, too empty. Then his eyes landed on the corner where his grandfather's upright piano had stood for 20 years, and his heart stopped. The space was vacant except for a small potted plant sitting on the floor where the bench used to be. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the empty corner as if his eyes were playing tricks on him. That piano had been more than furniture. It had belonged to his grandfather, a jazz musician who played in smoky clubs during the 50s and 60s. When his grandfather passed away, the piano came to Marcus, who taught himself to play by ear, spending countless nights working through blues progressions and old standards. That piano had seen him through his mother's death, through his divorce, through every deployment and return. It was the one constant in a life filled with chaos and uncertainty. His 13-year-old daughter, Emma, appeared in the doorway to the kitchen. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore an oversized sweater that hung past her hands. When she saw her father, her face went pale. She had been expecting him today, but clearly not this early. The bus from the base wasn't supposed to arrive until evening. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're home." Marcus turned to face her, and Emma saw something in his expression that made her stomach twist with guilt and fear. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered and weathered by years of service, with gray threading through his dark hair at the temples. Right now, he looked every bit the soldier, not the gentle father who used to make her pancakes on Sunday mornings. "Where is it?" His voice was low and controlled, which was somehow worse than if he had yelled. "Where's the piano, Emma?" Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the doorframe. She had rehearsed this conversation in her mind 100 times over the past 3 months, but now that the moment had arrived, every word she had planned disappeared. Her throat felt tight, and tears began to well up in her eyes. "I can explain," she managed to say, her voice cracking. "Please, Dad, just let me explain." Marcus set his jaw and waited, his arms crossed over his chest. The silence between them stretched out painfully. Emma had never seen her father look at her this way, like she was a stranger who had betrayed his trust. She thought about running to her room, locking the door, hiding from this confrontation. But she was done running from hard things. She had learned that much in the past year. "I sold it," Emma finally said, the words coming out in a rush. 3 months ago. I got $800 for it from a music store downtown." The confession hung in the air between them. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. $800. His grandfather's piano, the instrument that had survived decades in cross-country moves, that had been played by genuine jazz legends when his grandfather hosted jam sessions, sold for $800 to some second-hand shop. Why? The single word came out rough, almost broken. "Why would you do that?" Emma's tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. She wiped at them with her sleeve, trying to compose herself enough to speak. Her Aunt Linda, who had been staying with her while Marcus was deployed, had warned her this would be hard. But Linda didn't understand. Nobody understood except Emma and one other person. "There's someone I want you to meet," Emma said quietly. "Someone who needed help. Someone who needed it more than we needed that piano sitting in the corner collecting dust." Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. Collecting dust? That piano had been his sanctuary, his therapy, his connection to a grandfather who had taught him that music could heal wounds that medicine couldn't touch. And his daughter had sold it to help some stranger? "I don't care who needed help," Marcus said, his voice rising despite his attempt to stay calm. "That wasn't yours to sell, Emma. That piano was family. It was history. You had no right. I know, Emma said, her voice small. I know I should have asked you first. But you were in Afghanistan, and there was no time, and I thought, she stopped, struggling to find the right words. I thought you would understand once you met her. Once you heard her story. Marcus shook his head, exhausted suddenly from the long journey home and this unexpected gut punch. He had imagined his homecoming differently. He had pictured Emma running into his arms, the two of them ordering pizza and staying up late talking about everything he had missed. Instead, he was standing in his living room, staring at an empty space where his most precious possession used to be. I need some air, Marcus said, turning toward the door. I can't do this right now. Dad, please, Emma called after him, but he was already walking out, letting the screen door slam behind him. Marcus walked with no destination in mind, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. The neighborhood looked the same as it always had, modest houses with small yards, cars parked along the street, a few kids riding bikes in the fading afternoon light. He had grown up 3 blocks from here, had bought this house when Emma was born, determined to give her the stable childhood he never had. And he thought he had done okay, considering. He worked hard, saved money, made sure Emma had what she needed. When her mother left, when the divorce papers came through, he stepped up. He learned to braid hair and pack school lunches and help with homework. Then came the deployments. First 6 months, then another year, then this last 18-month stretch that had felt like a lifetime. He knew it was hard on Emma, being apart so much. His sister Linda had moved in to take care of her, and he called whenever he could, but it wasn't the same as being there. Still, he never imagined coming home to this. He found himself at the small park at the end of the street, the same park where he used to push Emma on the swings when she was little. He sat on a bench and watched the sun sink lower in the sky, painting everything orange and gold. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Linda, give her a chance to explain. Trust me on this. Marcus put the phone away without responding. Trust. That was the problem. Wasn't it? He had trusted Emma to respect what mattered to him, to understand that some things weren't just objects but pieces of your soul. And she had sold his grandfather's piano like it was a used couch on Craigslist. Back at the house, Emma sat at the kitchen table with her Aunt Linda, who had come over as soon as Emma called her in a panic. Linda was Marcus's younger sister, a high school art teacher with kind eyes and an endless supply of patience. She had seen Emma through her father's deployment, through the loneliness and the worry, through the choices that had led to this moment. He hates me, Emma said miserably, her head resting on her folded arms. He doesn't hate you, Linda said firmly. He's hurt and confused, and he just got home after a year and a half of very hard work in a very dangerous place. Give him time to process. He won't understand, Emma said. He's just going to see that I sold Grandpa Joe's piano, and he'll never forgive me. Linda reached over and squeezed Emma's shoulder. Then you need to show him why you did it. You need to take him to meet Lily. Emma lifted her head, her eyes red and puffy from crying. What if he won't come? What if he refuses to even listen? Your father is a good man, Linda said. He's been through more than most people can imagine, and he's learned that the world isn't black and white. He'll listen eventually. He just needs a minute to breathe. When Marcus finally returned to the house 2 hours later, the sun had set completely, and the street lights had flickered on. He found Emma sitting on the front steps, hugging her knees to her chest. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, her face anxious and hopeful at the same time. I'm sorry, she said before he could speak. I'm so sorry, Dad. I know I messed up. I know I should have found another way. Marcus sat down beside her on the step, suddenly feeling every one of his 42 years. The anger had cooled during his walk, replaced by a weary sadness. He had spent 18 months keeping soldiers alive, making impossible decisions, carrying the weight of command. He was so tired of hard things. Tell me, he said quietly. Tell me why you did it. Emma took a shaky breath and began to talk. She told him about 7 months ago, when a new girl had transferred to their school. Her name was Lily Chen, and she was small and quiet with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The other kids had mostly ignored her, but Emma had noticed how Lily would sit alone at lunch, how she never talked in class, how she seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on her thin shoulders. Emma had made an effort to be friendly, and slowly, very slowly, Lily had opened up. Her story came out in pieces over weeks and months. Lily was 12, the daughter of immigrants who had come to America with dreams of a better life. Her father had died in a construction accident 2 years ago, leaving her mother to raise Lily and her younger brother alone. Her mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and working in a factory during the day, barely scraping together enough money to keep their tiny apartment and put food on the table. But Lily had a gift. She could play the piano with a skill that seemed impossible for someone who had never had formal lessons. She had taught herself by watching videos online and practicing on an old keyboard her father had bought her from a thrift store before he died. That keyboard had been her treasure, the one thing that brought her joy in a life filled with struggle and loss. 6 months ago, the keyboard broke. It was cheap and old, and when it stopped working, there was no money to fix it or replace it. Lily's mother couldn't afford it, not when they were behind on rent and her brother needed new shoes and the electricity bill was overdue. Lily had cried when she told Emma, not loud dramatic tears, but quiet ones that spoke of dreams dying and hope fading away. Emma had wanted to help. She had asked Linda if they could buy Lily a new keyboard, but even a basic one cost several $100s, money they didn't have to spare on Marcus's military salary. Emma had thought about fundraising, about asking neighbors for donations, but something held her back. She was embarrassed for Lily, didn't want to put her family's poverty on display for the whole neighborhood to see. Then one night, Emma had looked at the piano in the corner of the living room. Her father had been gone for over a year already. The piano sat untouched, silent. Emma couldn't play it herself. Linda couldn't play it. It was just sitting there, a beautiful instrument going to waste while 3 blocks away, a girl with genuine talent had nothing. I thought about what Grandpa Joe would have wanted, Emma said, her voice trembling. You always told me he believed music should be shared, that it was meant to be played, not locked away. And I thought maybe he would understand. Maybe he would want his piano to go to someone who would actually use it, who needed it desperately. Marcus listened in silence, his jaw working as he processed this information. He could see the logic in Emma's thinking, could even admire her compassion. But it didn't erase the loss, didn't fill the empty corner in his living room or the hollow place in his chest. You still should have asked me, he said finally. You should have called, sent a message, something. That wasn't your decision to make alone. I know, Emma whispered. I know that now. But at the time, I just saw someone who needed help, and I had a way to help them, and it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like what you would have done if you were here. Those words hit Marcus harder than he expected. What he would have done? Would he have given away his grandfather's piano to help a struggling child he had never met? He wanted to say no, to insist that family heirlooms were different, that some things were too precious to give away. But he knew the truth was more complicated than that. I want you to meet her, Emma said. Lily. I want you to hear her play. And then if you still hate me, if you still think I did the wrong thing, I'll understand. Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her. When he had left for Afghanistan, she had been a child, goofy and carefree. The young woman sitting beside him now had aged in his absence. She had made an adult decision, right or wrong, based on compassion and sacrifice. She had given away something precious to help someone in need. Wasn't that what he had taught her? Wasn't that what serving your country was supposed to be about? Okay, he said softly. I'll meet her. The relief on Emma's face was immediate and overwhelming. She threw her arms around her father's neck, hugging him tightly. Marcus held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling the tension in his shoulders finally begin to ease. He was home. His piano was gone, but his daughter was here, and she had grown into someone who tried to do good in the world even when it was hard. That had to count for something. The next morning, Emma led her father 3 blocks over and 2 streets down to a neighborhood that was noticeably poorer than their own. The houses here were smaller, more run down, with peeling paint and yards that needed attention. They stopped in front of a narrow duplex with cracked concrete steps leading to a weathered door. Emma knocked softly, and after a moment, the door opened to reveal a small Asian woman in her late 30s, wearing scrubs that marked her as having just come from or about to go to work. Her face was tired but became warm when she saw Emma. "Emma," she said with a slight accent. "Come in, please. Lily told me you might come today." They stepped into a tiny living room that was clean but sparse. The furniture was old and mismatched, clearly gathered from thrift stores and sidewalk finds. But in the corner, positioned to catch the light from the window, sat Marcus's grandfather's upright piano. It looked different here, somehow both out of place in its grandeur and perfectly at home. A small girl emerged from the hallway, and Marcus recognized her immediately from Emma's description. Lily Chin was delicate and serious, with long black hair and enormous dark eyes that seemed too old for her young face. She looked at Marcus with a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. "Lily," Emma said gently, "this is my dad. The one I told you about." Lily bowed slightly, a gesture that seemed both formal and natural. "Thank you for your service," she said softly. "And thank you for the piano. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever owned." Marcus felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. The way she said it, with such genuine reverence, made something shift in his chest. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak yet. "Would you like to hear her play?" Lily's mother, Mrs. Chen, asked. "She practices every day, sometimes for hours. The neighbors used to complain about the keyboard, but now they come to their windows to listen." Lily moved to the piano without waiting for an answer. She adjusted the bench, sat down with perfect posture, and placed her small hands on the keys. For a moment, she sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, centering herself. Then she began to play. The first notes floated through the small room, and Marcus recognized the piece immediately. It was round midnight, the Thelonious Monk standard that his grandfather had played constantly, that Marcus himself had struggled to master for years. But Lily didn't struggle. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence and feeling, pulling out the melancholy beauty of the piece, the loneliness and the hope tangled together in that haunting melody. Marcus felt his eyes sting with unexpected emotion. This was how the piano was meant to sound, how his grandfather had played it, with soul and understanding that went beyond technical skill. Lily played like someone who knew what it meant to hurt, to lose, to keep going anyway. She played like music was the only language that could express what was in her heart. When she finished, the room was silent except for the faint sound of traffic outside. Lily opened her eyes and looked at Marcus with apprehension, waiting for his judgment. "Where did you learn that?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. "YouTube," Lily said simply. "I watched videos of Thelonious Monk, and I tried to understand what he was feeling when he played. My father used to say that jazz is about telling your story without words. I tried to tell mine." Marcus moved closer to the piano, running his hand along the familiar wood. There were new scratches he didn't recognize, evidence of the instrument's journey from his living room to this small duplex. But it had been well cared for. The keys were clean, the surface polished. "My grandfather bought this piano in 1952, Marcus said quietly. "He played with Charlie Parker once, did you know that? Just once, at some club in Chicago. He said it was the best night of his life." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Charlie Parker?" Marcus nodded. "Grandpa Joe used to tell me that a piano isn't just wood and strings. It's all the music that's ever been played on it, all the emotions that went into those notes, all the stories told through the keys. He said a good instrument remembers." "I can feel that," Lily said seriously. "When I play, sometimes I can feel something in the piano, like it's teaching me, showing me how to bring out the music that's hiding inside." Marcus felt Emma watching him, holding her breath, waiting to see how he would react. He looked at his daughter, then at this small girl who had been given his family's treasure, then at Mrs. Chen, who stood in the doorway with her hands clasped together, hope and worry written across her face. "Play something else," Marcus said to Lily. "Play whatever you want." Lily's face lit up. She turned back to the piano and this time launched into something more upbeat, a jazz standard that made you want to snap your fingers and tap your feet. Her hands danced across the keys, and Marcus saw it clearly now. This wasn't just a talented kid plunking out tunes. This was a genuine musician, someone with an innate understanding of rhythm and melody and emotion. The music filled the small room, spilled out the open window into the street. Marcus glanced outside and saw what Mrs. Chen had mentioned. Neighbors had appeared on their porches and stoops, listening. An elderly man sat on his front steps with his eyes closed, a smile on his weathered face. 2 young kids had stopped their bike riding to stand and listen. When Lily finished, Marcus found himself clapping, genuine applause that came from a place of recognition and respect. This was what his grandfather would have wanted. Not a silent instrument gathering dust, but music shared with a community, bringing joy to people who needed it. "You're really good," Marcus said. "Like, professionally good. Have you had any formal training?" Lily shook her head. "We can't afford lessons. I just watch videos and practice as much as I can." An idea was forming in Marcus's mind, something that felt right in a way he couldn't quite explain yet. But before he could speak, Mrs. Chen stepped forward, her voice apologetic. "I'm sorry," she said to Marcus. "Emma told us about the piano, about your grandfather. We would never have accepted it if we had known how much it meant to your family. I can try to buy it back from the store, return it to you." "No," Marcus interrupted. The word came out more forcefully than he intended, and everyone looked at him in surprise. He softened his tone. "No, that's not what I want." He looked at the piano, at Lily sitting on the bench, at Emma's hopeful face, and suddenly everything became clear. His grandfather had always said that holding on to things too tightly meant you couldn't receive anything new. He had said that music was meant to flow like water, always moving, always finding new paths. "I want to make a deal," Marcus said, looking directly at Lily. "The piano stays here. It's yours. But I want you to promise me something." "Anything," Lily said immediately. "I want you to keep getting better. I want you to take this gift seriously, to work hard, to honor the music and the instrument. And when you're ready, when you're really ready, I want you to perform. Really perform, not just for neighbors, but on a real stage where people will pay attention." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I promise," she whispered. "I promise I'll work as hard as I can. And one more thing," Marcus added. "I want you to teach my daughter. Emma sold this piano to help you, so now you're going to help her. Show her what you know. Make her learn this instrument the way it's meant to be learned." Emma's mouth fell open in surprise. "Dad, I can't, I'm not musical." "You're not musical because you never tried," Marcus said gently. "You gave away this piano for someone else. Now you're going to learn to play it for yourself." Mrs. Chen stepped forward, taking Marcus's hand in both of hers. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You don't know what this means to us. The piano, but also your understanding. Most people would be angry. Most people would demand it back." Marcus squeezed her hand. "My grandfather used to say that the best way to honor a gift is to share it. I think he'd be happy knowing his piano found someone who really needs it." Over the following weeks, Marcus fell into a new routine. He spent his days readjusting to civilian life, catching up with Emma, helping around the house. But every few evenings, he would walk over to the Chen house and sit in their small living room, listening to Lily practice. Sometimes Mrs. Chen would make tea, and they would talk about music, about life, about the struggles and small victories that made up everyday existence. Marcus learned that Mrs. Chen, whose first name was Lin, had been a teacher in China before coming to America. She had given up her career to move here with her husband, dreaming of better opportunities for their children. When her husband died, she had been forced to take whatever work she could find, her teaching credentials meaningless without American certifications she couldn't afford to pursue. "I failed him," Lynn said one evening, her English more halting when she was tired or emotional. "My husband worked so hard, and for what? So I could clean toilets and our children could live in this tiny place?" "You didn't fail anyone," Marcus said firmly. "You kept your family together. You're raising 2 kids alone in a country that wasn't yours, working jobs that would break most people. That's not failure. That's courage." Lynn wiped her eyes, managing a small smile. Lily's father, he believed she would be special. He said she had something rare. But without lessons, without opportunities, how can she become what she might be? That question haunted Marcus. He started researching music programs for underprivileged kids, scholarship opportunities, competitions that Lily might enter. He reached out to contacts from his military days, asking if anyone knew music teachers who might take on a talented student pro bono. He was surprised by how many people wanted to help once they heard Lily's story. Meanwhile, Emma started her piano lessons with Lily. At first, it was awkward. Emma felt self-conscious about being taught by someone younger than her, especially someone so naturally gifted. Her fingers felt clumsy and stupid on the keys, and she wanted to quit after the first week. "This is impossible," Emma complained to her father after a particularly frustrating session. "Lily makes it look so easy, but my brain can't tell my fingers what to do fast enough." "That's because you're thinking too much," Marcus said. "Music isn't about your brain. It's about feeling. Stop trying to play it right and just try to feel it." Easy to say, harder to do. But Emma persisted, partly because her father had asked her to, partly because she felt she owed it to Lily after all the girl had been through. And slowly, incredibly slowly, something began to click. Her fingers started finding the right keys. Simple melodies emerged from her clumsy attempts. She started to understand what her father meant about feeling the music instead of thinking it. 6 weeks after Marcus returned home, he received an unexpected phone call. It was from a woman named Dr. Patricia Morrison, head of the youth music program at the city's Performing Arts Center. Marcus had sent her a video of Lily playing, along with a letter explaining her situation. "Mr. Webb," Dr. Morrison said, her voice warm and professional, "I have to tell you, in 20 years of running this program, I've never seen raw talent quite like this." "The girl has no formal training?" "None," Marcus confirmed. "She's entirely self-taught through online videos." "Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. I'd like to offer her a full scholarship to our intensive summer program. It's 8 weeks, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. She'll work with our best instructors, learn proper technique, music theory, performance skills. If she progresses the way I think she will, we can talk about continuing with regular lessons during the school year." Marcus felt his chest swell with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "That's incredibly generous. I'm sure Lily and her mother will be thrilled." "There's one condition," Dr. Morrison added. "The program culminates in a showcase performance at the Arts Center. All the students perform, and we invite the community, local media, potential donors. It's a significant opportunity but also significant pressure. Do you think she can handle that?" Marcus thought about Lily, about how she played with her eyes closed, lost in the music, how she transformed from a shy, quiet girl into someone fierce and focused when she sat at the piano. "Yes," he said with certainty. "She can handle it." When Marcus told Lily and her mother about the scholarship, Lynn burst into tears and hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. Lily stood frozen in shock, unable to process that something so wonderful could actually be happening to her. "Really?" she kept asking. "Really, it's true? I can really go?" "Really," Marcus assured her. "You start in 2 weeks." That night, Lily played with a joy and energy that Marcus had never heard from her before. The music that poured from the piano wasn't just technically proficient, it was transcendent. Neighbors came out onto their porches. Someone started recording on their phone. A small crowd gathered on the sidewalk, drawn by the sound of this prodigy who lived among them and was finally getting her chance. The summer program began on a Monday morning that felt heavy with humidity and possibility. Marcus drove Lily and Emma to the Performing Arts Center, a modern building with glass walls and sleek architecture that seemed to belong to a different world than their modest neighborhood. Lily sat in the back seat clutching a folder of sheet music that Dr. Morrison had sent her, her knuckles white with nervous tension. Emma sat beside her, offering quiet words of encouragement that seemed to do little to ease her friend's anxiety. The lobby of the Arts Center was filled with other students and their parents. Most of them looked wealthy, wearing expensive clothes and carrying professional instrument cases. Their conversations were peppered with references to private instructors and previous performances at venues Marcus had never heard of. He saw Lily shrinking into herself, her shoulders hunching as she took in the competition she would be facing. Marcus knelt down to Lily's eye level, ignoring the curious glances from other families. He spoke quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "You see all these kids? They've had every advantage. The best teachers, the finest instruments, all the money in the world. But you know what they don't have?" Lily shook her head, her eyes wide and uncertain. "They don't have your hunger. They don't know what it's like to want something so badly that you teach yourself from scratch. They've never had to fight for their music. You have. That makes you stronger than any of them." Lily straightened slightly, some of the fear leaving her face. Marcus stood and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Go in there and show them what real talent looks like." The first week of the program was overwhelming for Lily in ways she hadn't anticipated. The technical instruction was revelatory, opening up new dimensions of music theory and performance technique she had never considered. But it also highlighted the gaps in her self-taught foundation. The other students could sight-read complex pieces with ease, while Lily struggled with notation she had never encountered. They spoke a language of musical terms that she was only beginning to learn. Her primary instructor was a stern woman named Professor Elena Vasquez, a concert pianist who had performed in venues around the world before dedicating herself to teaching. Professor Vasquez had steel-gray hair pulled into a tight bun and sharp eyes that seemed to see every flaw, every weakness, every shortcut in a student's technique. During their first one-on-one session, Professor Vasquez had Lily play a simple Bach prelude. Lily made it through without major mistakes, proud of her performance. When she finished, she looked up hopefully at the professor, expecting at least some acknowledgement of her skill. "Your fingering is atrocious," Professor Vasquez said bluntly. "Your posture will cause you back problems within 5 years if you don't correct it. And your pedal work is so heavy-handed that you're drowning half the notes you're playing." Lily felt tears prick her eyes but forced them back. She had promised Marcus she would work hard, that she would take criticism and use it to improve. She nodded, her voice steady despite the hurt. "How do I fix it?" Something shifted in Professor Vasquez's expression, a subtle softening around her eyes. "You want to know how to fix it? Not why I'm being so harsh, not whether I'm being unfair. You want to fix it." She nodded approvingly. "Good. That's the right question. We'll start with your hand position. Everything builds from there." The lessons were grueling. Professor Vasquez made Lily repeat individual measures 50 times, 100 times, until the muscle memory was ingrained correctly. She made Lily play scales with books balanced on the backs of her hands to force proper positioning. She recorded Lily's playing and made her listen back, identifying her own mistakes before the professor would point them out. At home in the evenings, Lily would practice for hours more, determined to arrive at the next day's lesson with improvement to show. Her younger brother complained about the constant piano music, and her mother worried that Lily was pushing herself too hard. But Lily couldn't stop. This opportunity was too precious, too rare. She couldn't waste a single moment of it. Emma attended many of the sessions, sitting quietly in the observation area that overlooked the practice rooms. She watched Lily transform under Professor Vasquez's demanding instruction, saw her friend's playing evolve from talented amateur to something approaching professional polish. It was inspiring and a little intimidating. One afternoon, Professor Vasquez noticed Emma watching through the glass. After Lily's session ended, the professor came out to the observation area and regarded Emma with curiosity. "You're the friend," Professor Vasquez said. It wasn't a question. "The one who gave her the piano." Emma nodded, surprised that the professor knew her story. "Yes, ma'am." "Do you play?" "I'm learning. Lily's teaching me, or trying to. I'm not very good." Professor Vasquez studied Emma with the same intense scrutiny she applied to everything. "Not very good, or not very patient with yourself. There's a difference." She pulled out a business card and handed it to Emma. "We have a beginners class that meets on Saturday mornings. Free of charge for families who can't afford private lessons. Come if you're serious about learning." Emma took the card, too shocked to form a coherent response. Professor Vasquez had already turned away, moving on to her next student with characteristic efficiency. Emma looked down at the card, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and dread. She had never thought of herself as musical, had always seen her attempts at piano as a way to connect with Lily and honor her father's request. But now a real instructor was offering to teach her. Could she actually do this? That evening at dinner, Emma showed the card to Marcus. He read it and then looked at his daughter with a smile that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. "You going to do it?" "I don't know. What if I'm terrible? What if I embarrass myself?" Marcus set down his fork and leaned back in his chair, considering his response carefully. "When I first deployed to Iraq, I was terrified. I had all this training, but training isn't the same as the real thing. I was convinced I was going to mess up, get someone hurt, prove that I didn't belong there." "What happened?" Emma asked. "I messed up. Multiple times. Made mistakes, second-guessed myself, did things I wish I could take back. But I also learned that everyone messes up. The difference between people who quit and people who succeed isn't talent. It's whether you're willing to keep showing up even when it's hard." Emma twisted the business card between her fingers, thinking. Lily makes it look so easy. Like the music just flows out of her naturally. You know what's not natural? The 6 hours a day she practices. The way she accepts Professor Vasquez's harsh criticism without complaint. The years she spent teaching herself with nothing but online videos and determination. Talent opens doors, but discipline walks through them. You've got discipline. I've seen it. Now you just need to decide if you want to use it. The following Saturday, Emma showed up at the Performing Arts Center for the beginners class. She was the oldest student there by several years, surrounded by 8- and 9-year-olds whose parents had enrolled them in hopes of discovering hidden prodigies. The instructor, a cheerful man named Mr. Chen, no relation to Lily, didn't seem to notice or care about the age difference. He treated all his students with the same patient enthusiasm. The class was humbling. Emma struggled with concepts that the younger kids grasped quickly. Her fingers felt thick and clumsy on the keys. She couldn't seem to keep her rhythm steady, speeding up and slowing down unpredictably. But Mr. Chen never showed frustration. He would simply guide her hands back to the correct position, have her try again, offer gentle corrections without judgment. By the end of that first class, Emma's head hurt from concentration and her fingers ached from unfamiliar positions. But she had successfully played a simple children's song all the way through without stopping. It was the most basic accomplishment imaginable, something the 8-year-olds had mastered in half the time, but Emma felt a surge of pride nonetheless. Meanwhile, Lily's progress in the intensive program was remarkable. By the third week, Professor Vasquez began introducing her to pieces that were significantly more advanced than anything Lily had attempted before. Chopin etudes. Rachmaninoff preludes. Pieces that required not just technical skill but emotional maturity and interpretive understanding. Lily devoured these challenges like someone starving. She would take home the sheet music and study it for hours, marking it up with pencils in different colors, noting fingerings and dynamic choices and questions she wanted to ask Professor Vasquez. Her mother would find her asleep at the piano some mornings, having practiced so late into the night that she simply collapsed where she sat. Lin Chen was torn between pride in her daughter's dedication and worry about the toll it was taking. Lily had always been thin, but now she was losing weight she couldn't afford to lose, too focused on practice to remember to eat regular meals. Dark circles had appeared under her eyes from insufficient sleep. When Lin tried to insist on rest days, Lily would become upset, pleading that she couldn't waste this opportunity, that other students were practicing just as hard, that she had to work twice as long to catch up to their years of formal training. Marcus noticed the changes too. One evening when he stopped by to check on Lily's progress, he found her in tears of frustration, unable to master a particularly difficult passage in a Brahms piece. Her fingers kept tangling, missing notes, destroying the flow of the music. She had been working on the same 8 measures for over 2 hours. "I can't do it," Lily said, her voice breaking. "Everyone else in the program can play this." Professor Vasquez said it's intermediate difficulty. "But I can't get it right. Maybe I'm not as good as everyone thinks. Maybe I'm just a kid who learned some tricks from YouTube." Marcus sat down on the couch, not rushing to contradict her or offer empty reassurances. He let her frustration fill the room, let her feel what she was feeling without trying to fix it immediately. After a moment, he spoke quietly. "You know what I learned in the military? There's a wall that everyone hits. Doesn't matter if you're trying to get through basic training or qualify for special forces or just survive another deployment. At some point, you hit a wall where everything feels impossible. Where your body and mind are screaming at you to quit. Most people, when they hit that wall, they stop. They decide it's too hard, that they've reached their limit. But the people who become truly exceptional, they're not the ones who never hit the wall. They're the ones who hit it and keep pushing anyway." Lily wiped her eyes, listening. "How do you keep pushing when everything in you wants to stop? You remember why you started. Why does music matter to you, Lily? Really matter?" Lily was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "When my father died, I thought I would drown in sadness. Everything felt dark and heavy. But when I played the keyboard he gave me, even though it was cheap and half the keys didn't work right, I could breathe again. The music let me feel all the things I couldn't say out loud. It was like my father was still with me, helping me carry the weight." Marcus nodded. "That's why you keep pushing. Not because you want to impress Professor Vasquez. Not because you want to be the best student in the program. But because music is how you breathe. And when you remember that, the difficult passages stop being obstacles and start being just another part of your conversation with the piano." Lily turned back to the keyboard and placed her hands on the keys. But this time, instead of attacking the difficult Brahms passage with grim determination, she closed her eyes and thought about her father. She thought about the day he brought home that thrift store keyboard, how his face had glowed with pride when he presented it to her. She thought about how he used to say that every person has a song inside them, and the lucky ones find a way to let it out. She began to play, and something was different. The notes didn't come any easier, technically speaking. Her fingers still stumbled in the same places. But now she was playing through the mistakes, not stopping to berate herself, letting the music flow even when it wasn't perfect. And gradually, imperceptibly, her fingers began to find their way. The passage that had defeated her for hours started to emerge from the chaos, rough and unpolished but recognizably musical. When she finally played through the entire section without a major error, Lily opened her eyes to find Marcus smiling at her. "See? You just needed to remember you're not fighting the music. You're dancing with it." The summer program built toward its culminating showcase with increasing intensity. Students were assigned their performance pieces and given 3 weeks to prepare. Professor Vasquez selected a Chopin nocturne for Lily, a piece of breathtaking beauty that required both technical precision and deep emotional expression. It was ambitious, perhaps overly so for someone with only 8 weeks of formal training. But Professor Vasquez insisted that Lily was ready. "You have something most of my students will never have," the professor told her during one of their final preparation sessions. "You play like someone who understands that music isn't about showing off. It's about communication. It's about taking the feelings that are too big or too complicated for words and translating them into sound. That's a gift. Don't waste it by being timid. The other students in the program had noticed Lily by this point. Her rapid improvement had been impossible to ignore. Some were impressed and encouraging. Others were threatened and resentful. A girl named Madison, who came from a wealthy family and had studied piano since age 4, made pointed comments about students who got special treatment because of sob stories. Her friends would whisper and giggle when Lily walked past, just loud enough for her to hear fragments about charity cases and pity scholarships. Emma witnessed one of these encounters and felt fury rise in her chest. She confronted Madison in the hallway, getting right in the other girl's face with an intensity that surprised them both. "You have no idea what she's been through," Emma said, her voice low and dangerous. "You've had everything handed to you your entire life. Lily taught herself to play on a broken keyboard in an apartment smaller than your bedroom. She practices until her fingers bleed because this is her one chance, maybe her only chance. So yeah, she got a scholarship. Not because anyone feels sorry for her, but because she's twice the musician you'll ever be." Madison's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, not sure whether to defend her or retreat. Before anyone could respond, Professor Vasquez appeared in the hallway, her sharp eyes taking in the confrontation. "Problem, ladies?" Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "No, ma'am," Emma said quickly. "Just having a conversation about what real dedication looks like." Professor Vasquez's gaze swept over Madison and her friends, and whatever she saw in their faces made her mouth tighten with disapproval. "The showcase is in 2 weeks. I suggest you all focus on your own performances rather than concerning yourselves with other students. Jealousy is unbecoming and, more importantly, unhelpful. It won't make you play any better." She walked away, leaving the girls in uncomfortable silence. Madison shot Emma a venomous look before stalking off with her friends. Emma stood alone in the hallway, her heart still pounding, surprised by her own fierceness. When had she become someone who confronted people like that? The old Emma would have stayed quiet, avoided conflict, let injustice slide by unchallenged. That evening, Emma told her father about the confrontation. She expected him to be concerned or to lecture her about choosing battles wisely. Instead, Marcus looked at her with something that might have been respect. "You stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves," he said. "That's what courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but acting despite it because something matters more than your own comfort." "I just got so angry," Emma admitted. "Madison has everything. Money, opportunity, support. And she's trying to tear down someone who has nothing but talent and determination. It felt wrong to let that go unchallenged." Marcus reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand. "You're growing up. Becoming someone who fights for what's right. I'm proud of you." The week before the showcase, Professor Vasquez made an unexpected announcement during Lily's lesson. A representative from the National Youth Orchestra would be attending the performance. They were scouting for exceptional young talents to invite to their summer intensive program, an honor that opened doors to conservatories and professional opportunities most musicians only dreamed of. "I've recommended you for consideration," Professor Vasquez said, her tone matter-of-fact as always. "But recommendations mean nothing if the performance doesn't deliver. You'll be playing for someone who has heard thousands of young musicians. You need to make them remember you." The pressure of this information sat heavy on Lily's shoulders. She had gone from a girl playing alone in a tiny apartment to someone whose performance might determine her entire future, all in the span of 2 months. It felt like too much, too fast. The night after learning about the National Youth Orchestra scout, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with all the ways she might fail. What if her fingers froze on stage? What if she forgot the music? What if she played well but not well enough, not special enough to stand out among dozens of talented students? She thought about her mother, working double shifts to keep their family afloat, and felt the weight of not wanting to disappoint her. She thought about Marcus, who had given up his grandfather's piano and was now investing so much time and hope in her success. She thought about Emma, who had sacrificed a family heirloom because she believed Lily deserved a chance. The pressure felt crushing, suffocating. Lily got out of bed and went to the piano, needing to feel the keys under her fingers, needing to lose herself in music the way she always had when the world felt too big and too hard. She played quietly, not wanting to wake her mother or brother, letting the nocturne flow from her fingers in the darkness. As she played, something loosened in her chest. The music reminded her of what Professor Vasquez had said about communication. She wasn't playing for scouts or judges or critics. She was playing because music was her language, her way of making sense of a world that often made no sense at all. The showcase was just another opportunity to speak that language, to share what was in her heart with people who might be willing to listen. When she finally went back to bed an hour later, Lily felt calmer. She still didn't know what would happen at the showcase. She couldn't control whether the scout would be impressed or whether she would be good enough for the National Youth Orchestra. But she could control how much heart she put into her performance. She could control whether she played with honesty and vulnerability, trusting that her music would find the people who needed to hear it. The day before the showcase, Marcus took both girls to dinner at a small diner that served comfort food and had booths with cracked vinyl seats. It was his treat, a celebration of how far Lily had come and how much Emma had grown over the summer. They ordered burgers and milkshakes, and for a little while, they were just three people enjoying a meal together, not thinking about showcases or scouts or the weight of expectations. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Marcus said, looking at Lily seriously, "you need to know that you've already succeeded. You took a chance that terrified you, worked harder than anyone should have to work, and proved that talent and determination can overcome almost any obstacle. Everything after this is just bonus." Lily managed a small smile. "I'm scared I'll mess up. That I'll freeze or forget the music or play badly when it matters most." "You might," Marcus said, and Emma kicked him under the table for being so blunt. He ignored her. "You might mess up. You might have an off day. But you know what? Even on your worst day, you're still extraordinary. Even if you play below your best, you're still someone who taught herself to play piano from YouTube videos and then caught up to kids who've had years of formal training. Give yourself credit for that." Emma added her own encouragement. "I've watched you practice. Every day for months. I've seen how hard you work, how much you care. That doesn't just disappear because you're nervous. It's part of who you are now. Trust it." Lily looked at these two people who had changed her life in ways she was still processing. Without Emma's sacrifice and Marcus's support, she would still be that quiet girl with a broken keyboard and impossible dreams. Now she was someone with training, with opportunities, with a future that seemed suddenly full of possibility. Whatever happened at the showcase, she owed it to them to be brave. The morning of the showcase arrived with perfect weather, sunny but not too hot, with a light breeze that felt like a blessing. The Performing Arts Center buzzed with activity as families arrived and students prepared backstage. Marcus, Emma, and Lynn Chen arrived early to get good seats. Lynn wore her best dress, a simple blue garment she had bought years ago and kept for special occasions. Her eyes were already wet with emotion, and the showcase hadn't even started. Backstage, Lily sat in a small room with the other students, trying to control her breathing and calm her racing heart. She was scheduled to perform in the middle of the program, which Professor Vasquez had said was ideal. Early enough that the audience wouldn't be tired, late enough that she wouldn't have to endure the agony of waiting until the end. Madison was performing right before Lily, a piece by Liszt that was technically demanding and showy, designed to impress with virtuosic difficulty. Professor Vasquez found Lily in the waiting room and pulled her aside. "I want you to forget everything I've taught you," the professor said, and Lily's eyes went wide with confusion. Professor Vasquez smiled, the first genuine smile Lily had seen from her stern instructor. "Not literally. What I mean is, don't think about technique or theory or what the scout might think. Just play. Play like you did that first day I heard you, before you had lessons, before you knew what you were supposed to be doing. Play with that raw honesty. The technique is there now, built into your muscle memory. Trust it and let your heart do the rest. The showcase began with welcoming remarks from Dr. Morrison, who thanked the families for their support and introduced the program faculty. Then the performances started. The first student played a Mozart sonata with competent precision but little flair. The second performed a Debussy piece that was more successful, drawing appreciative applause from the audience. One by one, the students took their turns, some exceeding expectations, others falling short, all of them brave for putting themselves out there. When Madison took the stage, she performed with the polish that came from years of expensive lessons. Her Liszt piece was technically impressive, her fingers flying over the keys with practiced ease. The audience clapped enthusiastically when she finished, and Madison took her bow with confident grace. As she walked off stage, she passed Lily in the wings and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "Good luck following that." Lily felt a spike of anxiety but pushed it down. This wasn't a competition between her and Madison. This was about sharing her music with people who might appreciate it. She walked onto the stage and the bright lights hit her face, momentarily disorienting. The audience was larger than she had expected, hundreds of people filling the auditorium. She could see Marcus, Emma, and her mother in the third row, all three of them beaming with pride and encouragement. Lily sat at the piano and adjusted the bench. She placed her hands on the keys and felt their familiar smoothness, the slight resistance that came from quality instrument construction. This piano was magnificent, far superior to Marcus's upright, but the principle was the same. It was just wooden strings and metal, waiting for someone to bring it to life with music. She closed her eyes and thought about her father. She thought about the day he died, how the world had gone gray and empty. She thought about the keyboard he had given her, how it had been her lifeline through the darkest period of her life. She thought about Emma's sacrifice, about Marcus's kindness, about her mother's tireless work to give her children a chance at something better. Then Lily began to play the Chopin Nocturne, and from the very first notes, something magical happened. The nervousness fell away. The pressure evaporated. There was only the music, flowing from her heart through her fingers into the piano and out into the world. She played with the technical precision Professor Vasquez had drilled into her, but also with the raw emotional honesty that had been there from the beginning. The Nocturne was a piece about longing and memory, about beauty tinged with sadness, about the bittersweet nature of looking back on moments that can never be reclaimed. Lily understood these themes in a way that went beyond her years because she had lived them. Every note she played carried the weight of real experience, real loss, real love. In the audience, Lynchen wept openly, not caring who saw. This was her daughter, the child she had raised alone through impossible circumstances, sharing her gift with the world. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion, remembering his grandfather playing this same style of music on the piano that now belonged to Lily. Emma gripped the arms of her seat, barely breathing, overwhelmed by pride and gratitude that she had been brave enough to make the sacrifice that led to this moment. Lily moved through the piece with complete confidence, her fingers finding every note exactly where it needed to be. The middle section built in intensity, and she pulled more volume from the piano, more power, showing that she wasn't just a delicate player of gentle melodies but someone who could command the full range of the instrument. Then the music softened again for the final section, returning to that wistful, tender character that made listeners feel like they were remembering their own lost moments, their own bittersweet memories. The final notes faded into silence, and for a heartbeat, the auditorium held its breath. Then the applause began, not polite and measured like it had been for previous performances, but thunderous and immediate. People rose to their feet, a standing ovation that continued for what felt like minutes. Lily stood and bowed, overwhelmed, not quite believing this response was for her. As she walked off stage, Professor Vasquez was waiting in the wings with tears streaming down her face. The stern, critical instructor who never showed emotion was crying openly. She pulled Lily into a fierce hug and whispered, "That was transcendent. In 30 years of teaching, I have never been more proud of a student." The rest of the showcase continued, but Lily barely registered it. She sat backstage in a daze, replaying her performance in her mind, trying to process what had just happened. Other students congratulated her, even Madison offering a grudging, "nice job," that carried undertones of defeat. After all the performances concluded, Dr. Morrison returned to the stage for closing remarks. She thanked the students, the families, the faculty. Then she paused and said there was one special announcement to make. A representative from the National Youth Orchestra was in attendance, and they had asked to speak briefly to the audience. A distinguished-looking woman in her 50s took the stage and introduced herself as Margaret Chen, Artistic Director of the National Youth Orchestra. "I attend dozens of these showcases every year," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "I hear hundreds of talented young musicians. But today, I heard something exceptional. A performance that reminded me why I dedicated my life to music in the first place." She went on to describe, without naming names, a performance that combined technical skill with emotional depth, that showed not just talent but genuine artistry. She explained that the National Youth Orchestra was extending a rare mid-season invitation to this performer, asking them to join their summer intensive immediately and continue through the fall program. "Lily Chen," Margaret said, finally naming her, "if you're willing to continue this journey, we would be honored to have you." The audience erupted in applause again. Lily sat frozen in her seat backstage, unable to process what she was hearing. Emma was jumping up and down in her seat in the audience. Marcus had his arm around Lynn, who was sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. This was beyond anything they had hoped for, beyond their wildest dreams. After the showcase ended and the crowds began to disperse, Margaret Chen found Lily and her family in the lobby. She explained the details of the program, the training Lily would receive, the performance opportunities that would follow. It would require significant time commitment, she warned. Lily would need to miss some regular school to attend rehearsals and performances. The program would be demanding, potentially overwhelming. "I can handle it," Lily said, her voice quiet but absolutely certain. "Whatever it takes, I can handle it." Margaret smiled warmly. "I believe you can. You've already proven that you have what matters most, not just talent, but heart. The rest we can teach you." That evening, back at the Chen house, a small celebration took place. Marcus brought pizza and sodas. Linda came over with a cake she had baked. Neighbors who had heard about Lily's success stopped by to offer congratulations. The tiny living room was packed with people, all of them talking and laughing, the joy almost overwhelming in its intensity. At one point, Marcus found himself standing next to the piano, the instrument that had started this whole journey. He ran his hand along the wood, and Lynn came to stand beside him. "I still can't believe you gave this away," Lynn said softly to Marcus, her English careful and precise. "This piano, it belonged to your family. It had so much history." Marcus looked at the instrument, thinking about his grandfather, about all the music that had been played on these keys over the decades. He thought about coming home to find it gone, the anger and hurt that had consumed him in that moment. It felt like a lifetime ago, though it had only been a few months. "I was wrong to be angry," Marcus said. "Emma saw something I couldn't see. She understood that keeping the piano in our living room, untouched and silent, wasn't honoring my grandfather's memory. It was burying it. This right here, watching Lily play, hearing her share her gift with the world, this is what he would have wanted." Lynn wiped tears from her eyes. "Your family gave my daughter a future. I don't have words big enough to thank you." Marcus shook his head. "Your daughter gave my family something too. She reminded us what generosity looks like. What sacrifice means." Emma learned more from helping Lily than she ever learned from me lecturing her about doing the right thing. Across the room, Emma and Lily sat together on the couch, exhausted but glowing with happiness. Emma nudged her friend gently. "You know you're going to be famous now, right? National Youth Orchestra, performances all over the country. You're going to be the one everyone talks about." Lily shook her head firmly. "I'm just going to be someone who plays piano. That's all I ever wanted to be." The fall brought new routines and fresh challenges. Lily began her work with the National Youth Orchestra, traveling to rehearsals 3 times a week and attending special coaching sessions with visiting master musicians. The workload was intense, but she had never been happier. Every day brought new learning, new music, new opportunities to grow as an artist. Emma continued her own piano lessons with Mr. Chen, progressing slowly but steadily. She would never be a prodigy like Lily, would never perform on prestigious stages or win competitions. But she discovered that she loved music anyway, loved the challenge of mastering a difficult passage, loved the feeling of her fingers finding their way across the keys. She played for herself, for the joy of it, and that was enough. Marcus settled back into civilian life, finding work as a consultant for a security firm that valued his military experience. The transition wasn't always easy, but having his daughter home, watching her grow into someone brave and compassionate, made the difficult days bearable. He started playing piano again too, relearning the jazz standards his grandfather had taught him, letting the music work its healing magic on the parts of him that war had damaged. 6 months after the showcase, the National Youth Orchestra held a major performance at the city's concert hall, featuring their most accomplished young musicians. Lily was chosen to perform a solo piece, a Rachmaninoff prelude that showcased both technical virtuosity and emotional depth. Marcus, Emma, and Lynn sat in the audience along with what felt like half the neighborhood, everyone wanting to see their local prodigy perform on the big stage. When Lily walked out in her concert black, looking impossibly small in the vast hall, Marcus felt his chest tighten with pride and something deeper, something like awe. This was the girl who had nothing, who taught herself to play on a broken keyboard, who had been given one chance and seized it with both hands. Now she was here, about to perform for thousands of people, her future bright with possibility. Lily sat at the grand piano and began to play, and the music that poured forth was magnificent. She had grown so much, developed so far beyond where she started. But the essential thing that made her special, that raw emotional honesty, remained at the core of her playing. She wasn't performing to impress anyone. She was sharing her heart through music, the same way she always had. After the concert, as the crowd dispersed and the lights in the hall dimmed, Marcus found himself standing alone for a moment in the lobby. He thought about the journey that had brought them all here, about the piano that had seemed like such a devastating loss turning out to be the greatest gift he could have given. Emma appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Letting the piano go?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, this young woman who had taught him that love sometimes means letting go of what you treasure most. "Not for a second," he said. "Grandpa Joe always said that music is meant to be shared, meant to bring people together. That piano is doing exactly what it was always supposed to do. It's making the world a little more beautiful, one note at a time." They walked out into the cool evening air together, heading home to the house that no longer had a piano in the corner but felt fuller than it ever had before. Behind them, the concert hall lights flickered off one by one, but the music lingered in the air, a reminder that some gifts keep giving long after they've been given away. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.